Welcome everyone to today's webinar. I'm Céline Mollard, Ipsos Senior Client Officer at Ipsos Switzerland. I'm delighted to open the first 2022 webinar organized by Ipsos Switzerland. For 2022 first quarter, your Ipsos Swiss team has thought of a series of webinars to provide you with a 360 angle story on 3 topics which are strongly interlinked. Today, we will be focusing on brand activism. Why, when, how brands should take a stand from purpose to activism. This is such a broad topic and fascinating as well that celebrates this webinar will follow by a second webinar on equality, diversity and inclusion in April, and one more on sustainability in May. Those topics could be definitely celebrated in brand activism campaign, and this is why we believe they deserve dedicated session. Our colleagues from the Ipsos Global team will also organize some Ipsos key webinar referring to the same topic. Please note that those webinars will complement each other. The Global Keys webinar will be broad, while in Ipsos Switzerland webinar, we will be deep diving in each topic. That was the overview for the next 3 months. So today we'll talk about activism, more specifically from brand purpose to brand activism. Does it matter? When to do it, when not to do it, how to do it, how not to do it. And for this exciting topic, let me introduce you to our Ipsos experts. They are a very nice blend of global and local experts with different methodology and category expertise. We'll have Isabella, Arnaud, Laurent, and Steven. Those talents will share best practices, case study with a single-minded message, being human-centric. And at the end of this session, we hope you'll be able to understand why defining the right purpose-led marketing and activism will help your brand to differentiate and grow. So this is about 40-45 minutes session. We'll take questions at the end, so please don't hesitate, put them in the chat box, and we'll hopefully have time to answer them. If not, if you don't have enough time, we'll make a note and come back to you separately. So I will open the floor to Arnaud, who will tell us more about some framework and best example. Thank you. Over to you, Arnaud.
Thanks a lot, Céline. So very happy to be with you today. So today in that fantastic topic, there will be 3 chapters that will cover on brand purpose. So let's have a look at the billboard headlines. The first one, and that will be led by my friend Steven, who will look into why brands have much to gain by taking a stand and become more than consumer brands and become real citizens in society. Secondly, we will have a go at defining purpose. And we will see that there's not one size fits all, and there are many different nuances of doing purpose-led marketing and having purpose at the heart of your strategy. So if not 50 shades of purpose, we'll look at least at the main 3 flavors of purpose. Then in the third chapter, we will open our magic box of secrets and learnings with Isabella, Steven, and Laurent. And we will look at Ipsos learnings and lessons learned around how to drive and leverage purpose and activism. And as you hinted, Céline, at the end, as a conclusion, we'll share with you our view as to whether your brand, your company should choose purpose or not, and what are the human implications when it comes to that very strategic choice. So what I suggest we do now is that we hear first from my friend Steven as to why purpose and marketing is a great way to take a stand and is impacting your strategy in a positive way. Over to you, Steven.
Thank you, Arnaud, and hi, everybody. Let's indeed start with understanding why considering having a purpose or doing good for society in any other way can potentially be important for your specific brand. What we want to do first is talk about a case study for Nike, a pretty famous one where they talk about Dream Crazy. It's a purpose-led campaign. They ran a few years ago, where they used Colin Kaepernick, the man whose eyes you can see here and the rest of his body behind, an American football player who turned a civil rights activist. They used him to take a clear stand against racism and express their support for, let's say, the broader Black Lives Matter movement. Arnaud, can you play the video? bear with us.
Several people posting videos burning Nike shoes.
Nike is running straight into a political controversy.
People are so angry they're burning their own shoes.
Colin Kaepernick refused to stand during the national anthem, taking a knee to protest police brutality.
Nike revealed Colin Kaepernick as the face of its latest marketing campaign.
Believe in something, even if it means sacrificing everything.
Is Nike taking a risk?
I think they're taking a stand.
Tonight, the first game of the new season, and Nike is running an ad featuring Colin Kaepernick.
If people say your dreams are crazy, good. Stay that way.
Most of this country was talking about this last night at their dinner table.
And I'm never buying another Nike product again.
Nike stock today dropping 3%.
Who's going to win this cultural showdown of standing for the anthem? We are.
Check this out. I went out today and bought me some Nike stuff.
Oh, yeah. I want to applaud Nike. Speak up. We're right behind you.
This thing is bigger than just the United States, and I think it resonates throughout the world.
Kaepernick asegura que es
Kaepernick se opio su máscara.
30 años de su lema Just Do It.
Nike stock reached an all-time high last Friday.
I'm gonna buy more Nikes now.
Nike's on the right side of history.
So don't ask if your dreams are crazy. Ask if they're crazy enough.
What Nike did here is taking a very clear stance against the social injustice, particularly relevant for their target group. And none of this is a coincidence. They did this in a well thought through way. For instance, if you look at how they succeeded in integrating their brand purpose of moving the world forward through sports, with the brand essence, the consumer brand essence, which is built around the Just Do It tagline, always pushing your personal boundaries. That's not a coincidence. They were very conscious also how this would land with their core target group, even if it caused controversy amongst some people burning their shoes, etc. They anticipated this cultural success. So clearly, as you can see from the numbers, it did a lot of good to boost brand growth. So question now is, great to see Nike being successful, but what can other brands learn from this? I think the first thing that we need to do is look a little bit at the broader context. Why is it important for brands to take a stand in the world that we live in today? Well, the world, the planet, our societies that we live in, we are facing a lot of different tensions. There's a lot of evidence that people are increasingly aware of all the tensions that we are facing. Just a few percentages, people are conscious that we must do something about climate change. That's something that we see again and again in a lot of the research that we are doing. We see that 72% agree that if individuals do not act now to combat climate change, we will be failing future generations. It's a very strong statement. But people have other concerns. We see that people, about half the people, are very worried about the economic situation in their country, about inflation, affordable housing. They're unsure whether they will be able to hang on to their jobs. And globally, 2 in 3 people feel that their country is generally going in the wrong direction. So a lot of social, economic, health-related and environmental concerns. Now, this general concern about the state of the planet that we live on creates a very specific context which impacts how people are behaving. People are increasingly conscious that through their behavior, they can have an impact on the overall well-being of our planet and our society. If you think about the success of electric cars, plant-based dairy, all showing massive growth in recent years, reflecting the concern that people have for the environment. As a citizen consumer, people feel that they are part of the solution. And this also happens, this context also has an impact on the kind of employer that you want to work for. In the world of investment, we also see an impact there. There's increasingly more pension funds that require minimum sustainability standards from the companies that they want to invest in. So clearly, this offers a lot of opportunities for brands. Brands very much have a license from consumers to contribute to this better world. The belief that brands can contribute to a solution is for many people bigger than the belief that people have in their own governments to make a difference. And this makes sense. If you think about the size of a Unilever, Danone, Coca-Cola, they can have impact throughout the world, much more than what a single government could achieve. So plenty of reasons for brands to embrace purpose, activism, or other positive impact. But of course, it doesn't mean that the only way that brands can be successful is if they save the planet or bring world peace. We have to be realistic about the impact on brand growth of embracing a higher purpose. It doesn't automatically lead to success. A few considerations. First, differentiation remains important. When all the brands in a category are talking in the same way about sustainability, it's not going to be a driver of choice. We mentioned plant-based before. When all the brands continue to position themselves against animal-based products, they're missing out on opportunities to grow their market share within. Next, a purpose alone is rarely sufficient for people to choose a specific brand. Brands should never forget to also talk about their specific role within the category. When you think about hair care, for instance, it's also important that you say something about how buying that brand or product leaves your hair shiny and fresh, or how it makes you feel confident to face the rest of the world. In this context, we often talk about offering a co-benefit. So next to the emotional or functional category benefit, you can talk about a purpose. And people, even if people really very consciously want purpose to guide their choice, there are still a lot of barriers. People sometimes are confused, they lack information, they have wrong beliefs about what choices they should make to have the right positive impact. Sometimes we make it too hard for people to act upon their beliefs. Brands should make embracing positive impact as effortless as possible for their consumers. And finally, a consideration, we know these examples, embracing a purpose can also involve risks. For instance, when brands approach purpose in an authentic way, when brands make mistakes in assessing how people will respond, there can be quite a big negative backlash. Think about when Pepsi completely missed the mark with the Kendall Jenner campaign. They wanted to position Pepsi as a unifying force, but in trying to approach the topic in a more lighthearted way, they came across as fake, opportunistic, and even offensive. So instead, they had to pull the campaign. Something similar happened with Cadbury. They were very much mocked for trying to solve racism through with a chocolate bar. Good intentions. They launched a new bar designed to celebrate the diversity of India, but very soon they hit a massive social media campaign where they were being mocked for wanting to end racism, etc. These examples show that brands shouldn't rush purpose. But again, we should also not be put off by these negative examples. The Nike example clearly demonstrated that when purpose is carefully planned, carefully executed, it can make an important contribution to the success of the brand. Arno?
Thanks a lot, Stephen. So now what we are going to look at is very much, more examples about, trying to define what purpose is all about and how you can use it in marketing and activism. And let's start with the many different shades of opinion that you can trigger about purpose. And we've seen that marketers, consultants speak differently about purpose. So you have advocates like Peter Field and the APA, which is the British Board of Advertising Practitioners, who do plead for purpose and say that, you know, it's brands should all consider this kind of approach. Kotler even wrote a book already about purpose and even about activism, saying that activism should be the next evolution, and we'll speak a bit more about activism when defining that. While you've got some others like Byron Sharp, Terry Smith, who is an investor activist, recently spoke about Unilever and the Unilever strategy of embracing purpose, or Mark Ritson, who said that purpose should not be the only flavor, the only marketing strategy, the only way you do things when you're building your business. So at Ipsos, we do have kind of a nuanced view, which very much starts from the people and the relation that they have with brands. So indeed, our Ipsos framework starts and tries to distinguish marketing, purpose, and activism by focusing on the different audiences or the different facets of people that brands and companies engage with and the different expectations of people. So we do know that consumers, for example, are going to look to brands through the benefits that they can deliver, and that's very much, you know, what you generally do as marketing, define the benefits of your products and of your services and what you're going to offer. Citizens are expecting brands and companies to fulfill more than benefits, and that the brand, the company will have a higher purpose in their world, in their community, and in the world in general. While a third type of audience, employees, B2B partners, stakeholders in general, are looking into brands and companies as well to different values and to fulfill missions that well goes beyond consumerism. So looking at that framework and different audiences, we can see different shades or different nuances of purpose. Let's look at the first shade of purpose, which is marketing purpose, i.e. activating and speaking at the same time at the consumer and the citizen facet of people. So it is when brands are using a higher societal purpose to elevate their marketing and communications. So if we reflect back to the example from Steven and Nike Dream Crazy, this was much going beyond advocating that with Nike products you can push yourself to the max in your sporting capabilities. It was also about speaking about how you can push the boundaries of society and, you know, move the society forward and fight for progress in general. And clearly we saw with Steven that this initiative for Nike and this positioning really well paid off. Brands can also address the purpose expectation of citizens, but also the values, for example, of their employees or of their stakeholders, without making this as the core of their marketing and core of their communication. We could call that corporate citizenship. So it's when a brand or a company will have a specific action meeting its diversity and inclusion goals, its sustainability goals, yet not using that as the core of their marketing. And there's a very interesting illustration of that with what BNP Paribas, the French-originated bank, did in Poland. So basically what they do is that they wanted to act on gender equality in Poland, showcasing the values that they have and trying to influence Polish society towards a more positive vision of women. And they had this amazing initiative to defend the Polish woman image and role in society by basically trying to discontinue a porn or erotic magazine that was super popular and buy it off so they cannot publish it anymore. So basically what BNP Paribas did with its partners is that it aimed to buy this this erotic magazine, to discontinue it and to stop it, and just to show and to try and change the image of women in the Polish society. They created the last issue of this two-weekend magazine, promoting a much more positive and progressive image of women. They did that, and they successfully actually using the portrayals of famous writer, a famous sportswoman, Polish sportswoman, to show and to try and change and influence the society. So a very strong initiative that helped, BNP Paribas and their partners try and change a bit and influence gender perceptions in Poland. So that remained, of course, a separate initiative and something that they didn't actually made as the core of their marketing. And then we have, let's say, a third approach to purpose and activism, which we could call total activism. Why? Because it's going to try and guide not only the marketing, not only the corporate actions of the brand, but very much to irrigate and to align the whole company, its mission, its business plan, its business model towards a higher purpose and a higher goal. So we could speak about companies in that chapter created around such a societal mission. So we could all think, for example, about Patagonia, which is a brand that very much wanted to act upon sustainability. But there are some brands as well, which were created first on a consumer mission, a consumer promise, like Carrefour, the retailer, which embraced successfully that path. And we can speak very quickly about the Act for Food case, which is kind of a great example of that. So Carrefour, indeed, last year, they won the Grand Prix in business transformation in Cannes, and thanks to this great initiative. So what they did is that it started as a very successful consumer campaign where they wanted to show that they were acting for food, promising organic products, promising greater food servicing. A case that we researched, by the way, and that we spoke about in that paper, Be Bold, Be Creative, that you can read about. But what they did is that they went beyond that. So they didn't use that only as a marketing and communication activity. It was at the core of their new Carrefour business model. Everything that they devised, everything that they built was from sourcing ingredients to their suppliers relations to developing new products and services, and most importantly, the company policy, the mission was around acting for food. So that was for Carrefour, which is an example of total activism. What we would like to speak to you now is the secrets to making purpose meaningful and working for your brand. And looking at our case studies and lessons learned, we have built a 5-steps approach to looking into purpose-led activities and marketing. It starts with owning that purpose, making sure that you not only speak about it, but that you do and act upon it, telling it, which is finding a meaningful way to tell your stories about purpose and making sure that you are consistent over time. And here you just see 4 principles, but we have a 5th principle that comes first, which is finding your space, right, Stephen?
Indeed, Arnaud. As mentioned before, successfully embracing positive impact on society is not a coincidence. It is the result of carefully planning before activating. Brand and consumer research in the past has, of course, often helped us to inform brand strategy, but we need to update the way that we do that. When the context in which brands are operating is changing, the context in which consumers are living is changing, so should the way that we approach this kind of research. So traditionally, brand equity research has mainly focused on what you see at the bottom, the category drivers, typically the, let's say, emotional and functional benefits, benefits around which we've been building brands for decades, let's say. And of course, these remain important. Think about the co-benefits. But next to that, when we look at how today we are approaching brand equity and driver research, we have to take into account these new dimensions, let's say. So a first dimension that we've added next to the category drivers are societal drivers. They tell us the category and culturally specific ways in which having a positive impact on people, planet, and society can potentially drive the overall strength of the brand. In doing this, we can now demonstrate, as you can see here with the color coding for plant-based dairy, we can demonstrate that being perceived as having a positive impact on things like the environment, social integrity, etc., is actually driving choice. Then, just to complete the model, maybe not so much topic of this webinar, but we've also added a third layer where we include more behavioral drivers, where we take into account all the learning from behavioral science. For instance, how let's say the extent to which people are generally engaged with the category, things like cost of change, how that can also have an impact on whether or not we make a different choice. And so here in this example, we demonstrate, in this case for plant-based dairy, that societal drivers make your brand stronger. And we've done this type of research in many categories, where we see that in general, typically societal drivers have impact. The specific ones that have impact will differ from one category to the next, from one country to the next. So if we elaborate a little bit more on the plant-based example, what it basically demonstrates is that, of course, it helps us to identify possible purpose territories where a brand can lead, which a brand can own, etc. But what is beautiful about this approach is that we can try to connect the different levels. So we can connect societal with category drivers, for instance. So we look at this example for Oatly. Many of you will know it. Oatly is an oat-based milk replacement, initially from Sweden, but now entering into more and more markets and entering successfully. They've built that success by challenging the traditional dairy industry. One of their famous campaigns was milk, but made for humans, for instance. Now, of course, it's done a lot of good to steal market share from cow-based milk, but it's not doing that much to differentiate versus other plant-based dairy alternatives. Now, with this approach, we can now identify potential areas of growth, not just from the typical category drivers, but beyond that. So, for instance, we can see that we know that environment is an important societal driver, but they're not scoring, they're not performing very well on that. And what they can do, based on this research, we can help them to create sort of a bigger platform where they link their performance on environment to a strength that they have, which is being natural and organic. So for instance, they could talk about how oats, their key ingredients, Oatly, how they are organically produced, how they are sourced from nearby, rather than using soy, which comes from the other side of the planet. In that way, they could challenge Alpro, which in many countries where they are active is the leader in the category. So this is just an example of how brands can find a space, a purpose that that connects with what, you know, all the other strengths that they stand for. Now, of course, once they found their space, it's also crucial that they activate it in the right way. I believe Isabella is going to talk you through that.
Thank you so much, Stephen. So let's see some examples of brands that owned it quite well. So the first one that we have here is the leading brand, Always, that was pioneered by questioning feminine cliches and depreciative wording related to the feminine universe with this great campaign, Like a Girl. So the brand achieved a purpose-led communication that resonated with a new generation of consumers and confirmed its leadership, standing for girl empowerment. And how would challengers react to that? So what we saw is that Libris, Bodyform, they communicated feminine empowerment in their own way. So they found their own way to communicate it. They first identified through research that many females avoiding doing sports during their periods because they didn't feel comfortable with it. So the brand tackled indirectly the taboo of periods by showing through sports how bleeding can be a natural part of life, reason why the menstrual blood should also be seen as natural, as actually it's a sign of health. At this first stage, the key message of the brand was no blood should ever hold us back, and it resonated positively with the feminine audience. The next step for the brand was to tackle period taboo in a more direct way, talking shamelessly about it. The message is that periods are normal and they should be seen as such. Because in life, nothing should ever hold us back. And as such, Libre's body form found their way to strongly own feminine empowerment by connecting it more directly with the consumer need that the product fulfill. And we can see that it resulted quite well to the brand. But let's say that the brand did not stop there. Thanks God, thanks for us females. So in 2018, the brand went one step further in championing feminine proudness by tackling another taboo. The fact that more than 90% of women had negative perception of their genitals, the vulvas, resulting in a high trend of genital plastic surgery. So Essity, which is the owner of Libres and Bodyform, decided to fight the problem by frankly speaking about it in a funny but very respectful way by celebrating females' diversity. Early stage Ipsos research, which is in labs, confirmed the great potential of ownership and differentiation for the brand of this campaign. It was also a perfect momentum as Essity was just launching its first range of intimate product for hygiene, for female hygiene. The campaign was recognized by its creativeness, we can see here with a cane lion, and by our tracking research, and the numbers in the market obviously showed a 33% of gaining share in intimate hygiene in 8 weeks.
Excellent. Thanks for this wonderful case, Isabella. So I would like to speak to you about another requirement for brands when they are using purpose is to tell it in a meaningful way. And the way you are going to craft your communication is essential. And here is a great example of this, which is an example coming from ABI, Budweiser. And the fact that they wanted to communicate about sustainability, their sustainability efforts by switching their energy sources for production from electricity to wind-fueled electricity. But they wanted to do that on top during the Super Bowl. So their challenge was to tell a memorable story about wind energy, facing all sorts of other ads with celebrity with high production value. So they used early research, labs, exploration to find how they could gain attention and make that piece of creative memorable onto the sustainability story. And they leverage for that purpose a unique asset coming from the wealth of distinctive assets that they have, which is one of their emblematic dog face. So I think you won't hear the sound and the music that they played, which was very disruptive as well. But maybe you will see how they did it. So basically, they used the dog face start. And showing how the dog face and the dog is enjoying the wind, which was very much cutting through the clutter and very successful for the brand as a lever. They got public recognition, they got acclaimed reviews from PR, a lot of impressions, and what's more, they were also very successful in winning a Cannes Lions. And what's more, they managed to reduce significantly the CO2 and the cars that are normally used on the roads with that effort. So a wonderful initiative. Over to you, Laurent.
Hello everyone. So now I am going to speak to you about the do it part. So basically, not only brands have to tell the message, but they also need to act upon it. And we are going to look at two campaigns that are taking two different positions on toxic masculinity as well as different action. So on the left side, you can see Gillette advert. As you know, Gillette is really about the best a man can get. On the right side, you can see Carling brand. That's a South African beer brand, which for decades positioned itself as the beer of men. So two brands targeting men. Yet in 2019, you remember there was a rise of the Me Too movement, and the brand shifted their discourse to take position on toxic masculinity and launched two different new campaigns. So the way they tackled masculinity was really different. Gillette really focused on showing the negative side of masculinity, almost making male feeling guilty. They released an ad on YouTube, whereas Carling took a different angle and learned early via Ipsos research with Creative Labs that in order to appeal to a new generation of consumers, it also needed to express how masculinity could have a positive role in society. But the other reason why Carling was much more successful than Gillette is that not only was it more positive, but it also acted beyond what it said, because it supported women victims of male violence. It organized pre-football games events in football stadiums in order to educate the male football fans about the importance of stopping violence. They even did a song and play a song that male violence has no excuse. So they really act upon it. And this helped the Carling brand gain further awareness, walk the talk, and prove that they were genuinely wanting to change the game. It was not about only tell it, but also about doing it. While Gillette, on the contrary, failed to act, especially when the owner of the American football team they sponsor, the Patriot, was involved in a prostitution scandal. They did not act. They did nothing, basically, to solve this. So basically, if you look at the results, there was really two different outcomes. Gillette got a lot of views on YouTube, but quite a lot of negative comment and a lot of backlash on the internet with kind of negative reaction from the male audience. Whereas Carling registered strong business impact, record market shares in 3 months after launch, strong volume sales growth, and a really positive impact on key image attributes. So not only you need to tell it, but your brands need also to think how they can act upon it, upon their message. So that's really what consumers expect nowadays.
So here we will have a very nice example of how to repeat it, which is our last step. And of course, this is Dove brand, which is very consistent in all its communication and show that activism is not a one-night stand. So Dove, as we can see, started in 2004 promoting real beauty, with its campaign that instead of showing professional model featuring real woman, they actually showed real woman that is confident on themselves, expressing, showing their real selves. From Dove Revolution, showing the dangers of Photoshop, to their latest Courage is Beautiful campaign that featured really healthcare workers, Dove stayed true to its purpose. The message we can see is consistent in all its campaigns, whether it is the mega brand campaign or their skincare product or hand wash or any other subline, which clearly paid off for the brand. Thank you, Arnold.
Thanks a lot, Isabella. Thanks a lot for that, Isabella. So let's try and conclude now this webinar on exploration of purpose with maybe the million-dollar question: should we speak about purpose or not, and what you should do with your brand? So if we look at some data, and again, we're going to look back at the data from the IPA, the British Board of Advertising Practitioners, and what Peter Field has put through. He did an in-depth analysis of the cases from the IPA, which is cases from the UK, looking at cases that are leveraging purpose and cases that are leveraging non-purpose. And here you can see what they measured through these cases in terms of large business effects. And you can see that non-purpose is generating on average 1.6 large business effects, while all purpose cases are generating 1.1. And if you look just at the best of the purpose cases, just 2.1. So clearly we can see it depends. Even more if we look at the distribution of cases, if we look at the week more effective or stellar cases, there's quite a good mix of non-purpose cases, which are in gray, versus purpose cases, which are in green and in teal. So purpose can work, but also non-purpose can work is the conclusion that we could take from that look. So here is now our point of view as Ipsos about what you should do. So you should choose purpose, yes, if your brand, first of all, can find a space for it and can own it. And for example, that can be about leveraging market purpose in your marketing activities. Of course, it's even better if your stakeholders believe in it, your internal stakeholders, your external stakeholders, your employees, and all are willing to take the risk. What you should make sure if you go the purpose route is that you must make sure that you act upon it. Remember Gillette from Laurent. You must tell it in a meaningful and in an appealing way because it needs to work for your marketing activities, and you need to be consistent, which is the lesson from Isabel and Dove. Well, now, if you can't or for some reason doesn't work, let's remember that non-purpose marketing, focusing on your benefits still works, and it can be great to achieve your business goals, as we've seen with the IPA data. But what we would say is that, as we've seen in the intro with Stephen, your brand, your company still should try and have a role beyond doing business and marketing and care about people, be a good citizen in society and stand for something, even if that's just corporate actions, because your brand is not living in a silo, your brand is living in the human society. So it should have some meaningful role. This is exactly, and that will be our last slide before we open for questions. This is exactly what Yuval Noah Harari, who is the author of wonderful books, and one of them is Sapiens, explained in a discussion with the Amazon CMO. He told them that, of course, marketers need to care about brands. That's their job. They need to make sure that you have efficient business returns, and that's, of course, what we should do. But brands are not really existing while people are existing. And we should also care about people as marketers and professionals. And we should try as well to make people happy and to progress with society. So that's very much what we wanted to say, and we will share with you this video because I'm not Yuval Noah Harari, and he says it in a very clever way. But that was what we wanted to share. Now we're going to open the mic for questions and try to answer those. Thanks a lot for your attention.
Thank you, Arnaud. Thanks a lot. I will go through one question. Thanks to all the speakers, by the way, for your contribution. I think it was a super clear story. One question, there are several, but I think we have only time for one, that Isabella and Stephen could answer. How long can a long and well-established brand compete efficiently versus a small, agile, independent brands? Those small, agile, independent brands, they are built and the DNA is made out of activism most of the time since day one. So how could a big old brand fight against those competitors?
Thank you, Celine. Stephen, if it's okay for you, I can take this one. Because actually, I think this is a real common question to our clients, to many of our clients. We see this a lot here at Ipsos. I think we kind of drove the roadmap here because first it's important to identify what is your brand equity, right? What is the territory that you have the right to play? First, when you have this territory, then you can check how far your brand can stretch, right? What is the right stretch for your brand? Do the steps that we spoke about here, which are own it, do it, tell it, and repeat it, because it's, as mentioned, not a one night point, stand and finish. This would be like the first action to do, but you can also consider like brand strategy, for example, through the portfolio, different brands with different marketing strategies. It's one
points to consider, but also innovation stages of your products. You can launch restage or make some line extensions designed specifically to build a purpose for your brand overall. I would say that's it, Steven.
Yeah, and I think there's also another way to look at it. It's true. The purposeful brands, purpose-born brands, often have a perceptual lead, but they're much more niche. Many of the established brands are bigger, and so by definition, they have a much broader reach, which they can use to positive effect. And by now, there are many examples, even in what we discussed today, like. For instance, what Cat Food is doing should be inspiring for many non-purpose-born brands.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. I think we'll close here. We're a few minutes late. It was a great and fascinating topic. We can talk about hours on it. Thanks, everyone. Thanks to our speaker. We'll see you soon on the next webinar for equality, diversity, inclusion, another great topic. Thanks. Have a good afternoon, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.